Welcome to the Pilot's Inner Circle on Flight Training Radio, where a good pilot is always learning. Now, here's your host and certified flight instructor extraordinaire, Jason Schappert.
Hey everybody, Jason Schappert here of MzeroA.com, and welcome to the Pilot's Inner Circle on Flight Training Radio. You're listening live right now to Flight Training Radio, and you might be wondering, what the heck is Flight Training Radio and this Pilot's Inner Circle thing? Well, I'll tell you, Pilot's Inner Circle members and ground school members, just by listening to this podcast, you're listening to our earning FAA Wings credits. Just by listening to this. So this is the only FAA-approved aviation podcast or aviation radio show, whatever you want to end up calling it. It is a new month, February being that, and we are off to a really, really awesome start. Some really neat things cooking for you guys, video-wise, product-wise. Some really neat free stuff coming out here in the coming months. So really neat things happening over here at MzeroA.com. So today what I want to talk about is a question you guys ask me a lot. And before I go too far, I really need to stick to my notes here because I tend to ramble. As most of you guys know. This is 110% live, so if you have a question or a comment, it doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about. As long as it's about aviation, I'm happy to chat about it. The number to call in, it's toll-free, and that number is 877-537-6704, 877-537-6704. Or if you're somewhere where you can't call in right now, you can always ask your question via Twitter or via the MzeroA.com Facebook. I've got both those open right now to take your questions that way. And we'll take callers and we'll take questions a little bit towards the end of the program. So what I want to chat about today, though, is this topic. And that is prepping and preparing for your check ride. You guys know I have a lot of products out there to help you do this. Our book, Pass Your Private Pilot Checkride and Pass Your Instrument Pilot Checkride have been, bestsellers in the aviation niche, as if that really means anything. But these books just simply work. We have got this stuff down to, this checkride stuff down to such a formula. And you'll hear me say this too, that we're not learning to fly to pass this checkride. We're not one of those, you can't use the word crash course in aviation. That's just not a good phrase to use. We're not one of those kind of cram courses. I'm not a big fan of those. We're training to be real world pilots, not just pass a test. But I understand you've got to pass this test, and you're going to realize that checkride is more of a real world test than you actually would believe. So I'm done rambling for a little bit here. By the way, this is the free portion, the open portion of this. Pilots Inner Circle members will get access and be able to go inside a recent check ride I did with a student, and I'm going to share some of those questions. If this sounds like something that you're into, you want to earn wings credits, you want to hear the rest of this show, beyond just what I'm about to tell you now, you can visit pilotsinnercircle.com to learn more about membership as far as that goes. And as I dive into this too, I want to add that this applies to all check rides. I don't care if you're prepping for your private pilot, your insta pilot, your commercial pilot, ATP, it doesn't matter. This is going to apply to all your check rides. So really, there's obviously the two areas of focus when it comes to the check ride. That is your ground aspect and your flying aspect, the oral exam and the flying exam. And I'm going to break each down based on whether it's ground or flying, some just great tips and insights that are really going to help you, in regards of where to begin prepping, where to begin studying. So let's dive into that. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick here. We're going to dive right into that. Okay. By the way, again, 877-537-6704 is the number to call in with any questions. So in the Department of Groundwork, or as we often call the oral examination, you and the instructor, you and the examiner, simply sitting down, having some Q&A time is what it really comes down to. With that, you need to focus on 3 or 4 things to really, really hone in on. And the first is this: cross-country flight planning. You know, cross-country flight planning may be the big thorn in your side. I know those of you that are prepping for your written test, it certainly is, because I know those formulas take some time to calculate. I know they can be a pain in the butt. But your examiner knows one thing, and it's that if he gives you your private pilot certificate, that you are not going to spend the rest of your days flying around the traffic pattern, that you're not just going to bum over to the airport 10 nautical miles away for lunch and fly right back. He knows that if he signs you off and gives you your private pilot certificate, you are going to use that airplane and use that license to get up and go. You're going to want to go places. You're not going to want to just fly around the practice area. Okay, that's a gimme. That is why they are so big on cross-country flight planning. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, before your check ride, you are going to plan a fictitious cross-country. For example, they'll tell you, Jason, I want you to plan a cross-country from the Ocala airport to the Tallahassee airport. I'm going to plan that cross-country. However, you and I both know for our check ride, we're not really going to fly all the way to Tallahassee. We're going to maybe make it to the first or second checkpoint, and then we're going to end up diverting or doing something like that. Okay? But he or she is going to want to see that cross-country flight plan. They should be able to put their finger down any number on there, whether it be your ground speed, whether it be your magnetic course, your true course, it doesn't matter. They should be able to put their finger on any number on that cross-country flight plan, and you should be able to tell them how you got it. Now, let me tell you what this doesn't mean. And you guys know I am a huge, huge advocate of the iPad. I love, using the iPad in the cockpit. I love, navigating and using the iPad while we fly. However, simply downloading ForeFlight or WingX, whatever you prefer to use, and putting in direct to the Tallahassee airport and back is not sufficient for a flight plan. I'm talking about the old school navigation logs, really writing that sort of stuff out, crunching the numbers with a little, 5-function calculator and making it all happen like that between that and your E6B. It sounds so old school, and I know technology is just above and beyond, each and every day where it was the previous day. However, they still want to see you do it the old-fashioned way. Why? Because batteries fail, things fail, you can have problems. They want to know that you have a foundation to fall back on. And I appreciate that, and that makes sense to me. That's fine. So cross-country flight planning. The next thing they're going to get you on, and by the way, Georgia is a ground school gold member, emailed me some questions. George, I'm going to answer your questions here a little bit later too, but this is going to tie in really great with what you want to do, George, because the next aspect that they really want you focusing on is this: go and no-go decisions. Because once they give you that ticket, they not only know you're going to get up and go, but they know that you've got the right to get up and go, even if it's just minimum, VFR, or if the winds are awfully high. They want to pick into your brain and learn how you individually make great go or no-go decisions. And I think it's safe to say that everybody on this call would be willing to call themselves a fair weather flyer. Unless you're flying for a career, you're probably a fair weather flyer. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a fair weather flyer, and I fly for a career. All right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So learning to make go and no-go decisions. The first aspect of this is the weather, obviously, is the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe you have a problem on choosing good and bad weather days. I'll tell you a quick way to cure that is to do this. And I've shared this with you guys before. I've shared this with ground school members before. But I challenge you to do this. And that is to read a METAR every single day. First off, you're going to improve your textual weather reading ability. And secondly, it's oddly enough going to help you make great go and no-go decisions. This is what I mean. So imagine you woke up this morning, you make it your routine to wake up, jump on your phone, jump on ForeFlight, aviationweather.gov, whatever it is, and read, in not translated, in the raw text format, a METAR for an airport nearby. And then I want you to proceed to walk outside and look up and see what that looks like. And stand somewhere where it's open and see what that wind feels like. So now you're going to know when you read a METAR and it says 800 feet broken, you're going to say, well, I know what 800 feet broken looks like. I walked outside the other day and those clouds were low. I know what 14 knots of wind feels like because I felt 14 knots of wind when I was standing on my driveway. And that was in between my house and my neighbor's house, and it was still windy. Okay? Read a METAR each and every day. That will help you with that sort of stuff. If you guys don't have solid personal minimums set up, you have got to have them because a Checkride examiner is going to ask you, what are your personal minimums? For example, I will not go flying if the wind is greater than X. I will not go flying if the clouds are lower than X. Okay, having these hard numbers. Keeping in mind that your personal minimums change based on how often you're flying. Based on who you're flying with, my personal minimums are a whole lot higher than when I fly with my wife than when I fly with, let's say, another pilot. Absolutely, because I've got another pilot to help me out. My personal minimums are a whole lot higher when I'm flying a new aircraft that I'm not familiar with. I don't care if it's a new 150. I'm still not familiar with the airplane. You can fly the heck out of a 150. It doesn't matter. There's certain little nuances that are going to be different. So you need to raise your personal minimums anytime you're flying a new aircraft. Okay? Which then brings us into this point. We've covered weather. What about the I'm safe checklist? Okay? The I'm safe checklist. If you're not familiar with that, I have a great post up on MzeroA.com. Plus, in the 31 Days Safer Pilot Challenge, we talk about it a lot. And I can even tell you what day here if I can get some papers around here. But regardless, the I'm safe checklist, it ultimately comes down to you. The weather may be great. The airplane may be fine. But how do you feel? Did you get enough sleep the night before? Maybe you have a cold. That should be an instant no-go decision. Okay, maybe you were having some allergies and you took a Benadryl. Well, you and I both know what a Benadryl is going to do to you. It's going to make you exhausted. You shouldn't go flying in that sort of situation. Okay, it's the I'm safe checklist. One of mine is, have I eaten recently? Nobody likes that feeling of, feeling low blood sugar or anything like that. Have you eaten anything recently is an important thing. All right, and the last thing with making great go and no-go decisions, obviously, is airplane related. You're doing the pre-flight inspection, you find something that you just don't like. You know what? It's so much better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. And I say that and people smile and laugh at that comment, but that is so, so true. Airplane-related stuff. It could be something as simple as, that tire pressure is a little bit too low and I'm not going flying until I find a way to inflate that tire. Or, I was looking at this and it just doesn't look right. Or I was checking, the flaps, and there's just a little bit too much play in these flaps. I'm going to wait until I can get a mechanic to look at this sort of stuff. Learn to make great go and no-go decisions. The only way you're going to do that is by practicing, getting out there and do that. I encourage you to read a METAR each day. I encourage you to learn about the I'm Safe checklist. I encourage you to become a master of your pre-flight inspection and a master of the aircraft that you're ultimately pilot in command of. All right? And again, guys, any questions on this stuff, hit me up on Twitter. I'm at MzeroA, MZEROA, or on Facebook, facebook.com/MZEROA, MzeroA, or call in 877-537-6704. I'll be taking calls and questions here in about 10 minutes, 877-537-6704. The next area to focus on when it comes to ground stuff. We talked about cross-country flight planning. We talked about making great go and no-go decisions. The last aspect is this, emergencies. You are the PIC, the pilot in command. You have to be in command of that airplane, whether it's flying great or whether you have an emergency. It's just, nobody goes flying expecting an emergency, but you always have to be prepared for this stuff. I'm talking from an engine fire on startup to an engine failure on takeoff, in flight, cabin fire in flight, it doesn't matter. If you guys, and again, I'm not trying to promote my own stuff to you guys by any means, but if you have not picked up my book, In-Flight Emergencies, a step-by-step guide to preparing for the unexpected, you need to grab a copy. Grab it on Amazon, grab it in the MzeroA.com store, it doesn't matter. Very, very small book, very, very inexpensive book. The cool part about it is there's so many great videos. If you love my videos, you're going to really love the videos in there because I show you actual engine failures in flight. I show you engine failures on takeoff. I interview the pilots that those happen to, and show you the damage, and they share with you what they could have, should have, would have done better. It's like playing Monday morning quarterback. All right. In-flight emergencies. Just look that up on Amazon. Type my name in on Amazon, or go to the MzeroA.com store and grab it. You certainly won't regret it. So that is that. Emergencies. Just be ready for this sort of stuff, because they're going to ask you. They're going to want to see you chair fly them. They're going to want to hear what you have to say about each and every emergency. They're going to ask you, hey, Jason, what would happen if we're flying, you have an engine failure in flight? Well, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. You need to have that stuff down cold, okay, when it comes to emergencies. Again, questions you guys have, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Facebook. I see we have a few calling in. We'll get to those here in just a second, so be sure to hang in there. And if you want to call in with the question, 877-537-6704, and we'll take those here in just a little bit. Really, the last area to focus on, obviously, is now coming up to the flight. We've made it through the oral exam, and now it's time to push on to the flying portion. Well, there's really three aspects when it comes to flying for the Checkride, and this is this. First off, you know for a fact you're going to be diverted. 110% you're going to be diverted. You need to be prepared for that. If you haven't seen my video on creating a wind card, and if you're really curious, email me about it, but I want to say it's a Ask Jason a Question segment. I don't know the video name offhand, but I just go on MzeroA and look up wind card. It'll show you that sort of stuff. That will help you immensely when it comes to your diversion, because they're not going to want to see you divert with an iPad. They're going to want to see you divert with your sectional chart. They're going to want to see you use your plotter and use your E6 speed for this diversion. Okay? The thing about it is, you know where you're ultimately going to be going, because they're planning, you planned a fictitious cross-country from Ocala to Tallahassee. Well, you need to have every frequency, every runway layout, every taxiway diagram for every airport between Ocala and Tallahassee, because one of those you're going to ultimately be diverted to. Focus on diversions. Prep diversions with your instructor. Prep diversions on the ground. Important stuff. The second aspect, prepping for your Checkride, is hood work. You guys know I have a big beef with the FAA's very minimal requirements of only 3 hours of hood work. And I'll tell you, I was talking to actually Scott, I won't use your last name, but I was talking with Scott. Scott actually signed up for the aviation seminar at sea, and I remember Scott's a former ground school member, and I figured I'm going to give Scott a call. So I was chatting with him and talking about his Checkride. I said, well, what really, was there anything you didn't expect, anything different? And he said, Jason, the one thing that really surprised me was we did probably 75% of the Checkride under the hood. That was the really surprising part to him. You guys don't realize this, because your instructors only prep you for the minimum FAA requirement of 3 hours to get by. However, these examiners know yet again that you may not always make great go and no-go decisions. You may one day inadvertently find yourself inside of a cloud, and what the heck are you going to do? They want to see you demonstrate steep turns, slow flight, and stalls under the hood. They're going to want to see you track a VOR and intercept a VOR radial under the hood. If you're listening to this right now going, oh, man, this Checkride stuff's harder than I thought. I'm giving you plenty of warning here to prep for this sort of stuff. If you're not doing enough hood work, you need to be. And I'm talking, serious flying under the hood, from doing all your flight maneuvers. I mean, master them VFR first, obviously, but you've got to have them down cold, operating simulated IFR under the hood. All right? And really the last aspect of this here, and then we'll take a quick commercial break and dive into questions. The last aspect of this here is your landings. I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, duh, I know. They want to see I can land an airplane. You guys have to realize that examiners, I talk to the Checkride examiner I use on a regular basis, and I always ask them, I say, hey, what's the FAA really cracking down on? And it's always the same thing. Jason, if they can't land an airplane on center line, I can't pass them. I say, well, what do you define by landed on center line? He said, those main wheels have to be straddling that center line. If the main wheels are outside that center line, that's not a center line landing. Okay, if the main wheel touches the center line, that's not a center line landing. He wants that nose wheel peeling up the paint on that center line. Why is this? Because there have been a huge spike in running off the side of runway accidents, running into runway signs, all sorts of stuff. Poor crosswind landing management might be a fancy way of saying that. You have got to be the pilot in command, the master of that aircraft, and landings cannot trip you up. Soft field, short field, normal, emergency, it doesn't matter. They all have to be on center line. Okay? And I'm gonna share one last thing here real quick, then we'll take a commercial break. I see we have a few callers we'll get to, and I see we have some Twitter and some Facebook stuff coming in, so I'll get to all those. Give me just a second here. The last thing is this, and it's my Checkride checklist. And if you are a Pilot's Inner Circle member, a ground school member, you're going to get access to this. If you're not, I'll just kind of explain it to you. If you want to join, obviously you can go to pilotsinnercircle.com to learn more and check that out. But you need to have some sort of Checkride checklist. I was talking to Larry, who's a CFI and works with MzeroA.com quite a bit, helping out with stuff, and sharing with him about my Checkride checklist because he too has heard terrible horror stories of students being put up for Checkride and being rejected because they didn't have, their minimum hour requirement for this. So they're missing something here. I've got a full Checkride checklist where you just go off and scratch everything off. For example, you want to focus on flying. You don't want to focus on, do I have my 3 hours of nighttime? Do I have my night cross country? Do I have 3 hours of hood time? Do I have 3 hours of landing to a full stop at a tower field? How about 3 hours of Checkride prep within the preceding 90 days? Or my 5 solo hours with one cross country having 3 points of equal to or greater than 150 nautical miles? You want your instructor to worry about that sort of stuff. You don't want to have to dig through your logbook and find that sort of stuff. I got that Checkride checklist for the members, guys. That's going to help you a ton. But you don't want to be put up for your Checkride when you're not ready for it. So just to recap, then we're going to take a quick commercial break and get to your questions. Areas to focus on ground portion-wise, cross-country flight planning, go and no-go decisions, and emergency procedures. Flying-wise, focus on diversions. Focus on hood work, and lastly, landings. Landing specifically, putting that thing down on center line. Guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Any questions you have, now is the time to call in. Now is the time to get them in. The number to call in is 877-537-6704. That's toll free. 877-537-6704. Or hit me up on Twitter. At MzeroA, MzeroA, or on Facebook, facebook.com/MzeroA, MzeroA. Okay, I'm going to take a quick commercial break. I'll be right back with you guys here in about 3 minutes to grab your questions. Are you prepared for an engine failure on takeoff? What if there was runway remaining? What if there isn't? Would you know what to do if you lost radio communications in IFR conditions? My newest book, In-Flight Emergencies, a step-by-step guide to handling the unexpected, will cover all of this and more. Readers learn about a topic such as engine failures on takeoff. Then at the end of the chapter, there's a URL where they can go and watch a video of an actual engine failure on takeoff and see how the pilot applied the skills mentioned in the book. We're adding videos you love to the books you need because a good pilot is always learning. Check out the book at inflightermergencies.com.
Hey there, quick question. What would you do if you lost your logbook? Imagine having to go back in time to track down all of those hours, dates, aircraft flown, and airports landed at. It's near impossible. Trust me, I've done it. Welcome to Runway Log, the best online pilot logbook that lets you log flights on your iPhone, iPad, or Android device. Attach photos to certain entries and see where you've been with our interactive map. Best of all, it's backed up every hour and fully exportable to CSV or PDF. Runway Log has your back. It even sends reminders when your flight review is due. Don't wait another second. Start your free trial of Runway Log today. Visit runwaylog.com.
The Pilot's Inner Circle is more than just a ground school. It's a community.
And I want to thank you for all that you're doing. You're going to grow this show. You're going to be the most popular and best instructor in the nation because you focus on people and learning. You're sincere, you have integrity, and you have character. And your wife is a great gal, too.
Members get a chance to interact with me and others each and every week live in the radio shows like the one you're listening to now, or every Monday evening in the mock check rides and weekly workshop webinars that we do.
Jason really does a wonderful job teaching his students all the basics you're going to need to help pass your written test as well as your practical test. Once you're a member, the old online seminars every week, this is really a big key as far as my training was concerned, because there's those nagging questions, exactly what does this do, what does that do?
With a 100% pass rate and over 1,000 check rides passed, what's not to love about the Pilot's Inner Circle? Members also get FAA Wings credit for listening to this very radio show you're listening to now, in addition to the extended version. So what's not to love? Visit pilotsinnercircle.com to become a member today. Alrighty, guys. Jason back here with you. And again, if this is something that's interesting to you guys, maybe you want to earn that FAA Wings credit or are looking for a great online ground school, visit pilotsinnercircle.com to learn more about this show and learn more about membership inside of the ground school. So I'm going to take your questions real quick here. Again, number to call in, 877-537-6704 is the number to call in at. Let's see here. Checking in on Twitter from the Squawk Shop. Great online training episodes, awesome learning tools for us pilots. We're so happy to support you in all that you do. Keep it up. Squawk Shop guys, thank you so much. Matt, see you have a few questions here. Matt, I'm going to take your second question because your first question is going to be explained in the members only portion, which I know you'll listen to here in a little bit anyways. But Matt's question that really applies here well is, when lowering personal minimums, how would I know the difference between going too far and just a natural progression? Well, Matt, that's a really good question. And I'll tell you, you need to start off with higher than what you would think normal personal minimums. And let me give you an example of that. So here I am. I'm a brand spanking new private pilot. With just me on board, I'm going to say, I'm not going to go flying if there is any wind. I don't care, crosswind, headwind. If there's any wind greater than 7 knots, let's say. Any wind greater than 7 knots, headwind, tailwind, crosswind, doesn't matter. I'm not going flying. If there are any clouds, I don't care if they're overcast, broken, scattered, it doesn't matter. If there are any clouds lower than 2,500 feet, 3,000 feet, I'm just not going flying. And that's how you start it. And that sounds, you're thinking right now, geez, Jason, when am I really going to get to go flying? I'm going to have to wake up at 6 in the morning every morning just to have a chance to go flying. You know what? That may be the case at first. And then from there, set goals for yourself. And this may be something you can do with an instructor or something you can do with yourself. For example, when I add 50 hours on these personal minimums, I'm going to take off, 10% of what those are. Or I'm going to now move that to, I'm not going to go flying if there's any wind greater than, 10 knots and no crosswind greater than 4 knots. Or I'm only going to go flying, I won't go flying if there's a broken or overcast layer, at 3,000 feet or below. You can really update that sort of stuff as you go and set hourly goals to do it. Now, Matt, keep in mind that a good rule of thumb is this: have these personal minimums, but those personal minimums go up 25, 30, 35% when you're flying with someone who's a non-pilot, such as your spouse or a friend, or certainly when you're flying a new aircraft. Again, I shared the story. I could go out and fly a 150 right now. However, if I wasn't familiar with that Cessna 150, I would increase my personal minimums. Because although I have thousands upon thousands of hours in a Cessna 150, that particular machine that I'm flying is different. Everything is different from the tail number, obviously, to where certain instruments are located, etc. And those of you who've done a lot of flying know something as silly as a tail number can sometimes screw you up because you're so used to listening to something like 512 Romeo that when you're in Cessna 1234, it just doesn't click with you, as you, normally would. So that's that. I saw your comment. That's funny. So got that. Let's see here. Looking for some more here. Refreshing Facebook really quick. Bob, glad to hear you're listening here. Let's see. And George, I'm going to pull yours up now. George had some really good questions here, and I don't know where I put it. Hold on one second. Got George's here. So George, George had 3 questions. George, I'm going to take 2 of them, and I'll email you back the one here. So here's George's question. He's in the pattern on downwind, just passing the end of the runway. All is fine. His descent seems to be on target. Turns final. Everything still seems fine. However, somewhere between turning final and short final, he's finding himself too high, and he can't seem to shake this. Any suggestions? George, there's one thing. I love teaching landings, first off. And there's a little game I play with myself when you're landing like that. And you have to simply ask yourself constantly is this: am I too high? Am I too low? Or am I right on glide path? And you need to learn that. You are obviously, George, falling a little bit behind the airplane during this final phase of landing. Because if you were ahead of the airplane, asking yourself that question, am I too high or am I on the verge of being too high, you would have spotted it a long time ago. Remember, George, we pitch for airspeed, we power for altitude. So maybe you just baby that power back just a little bit more. Let that nose come down a little bit more. Okay, work on this sort of stuff. But George, ask yourself constantly throughout the pattern, am I too high, am I too low, or am I right on glide path? And the last thing George asked here, I think, George, it really applies to what we were talking about here is decisions, he says. It seems I'm always on the poor choice decisions, especially when it comes to weather. His plans are to be a fair weather flyer as a pilot, but being in the situation he's in with a scheduled time and scheduled instructor, ultimately, needs to fly, he's forced to make decisions under less than optimal conditions. That's a really tough one, George, because you're right. You've scheduled a set time. That instructor has scheduled a set time. The airplane is booked. All you're flying. However, if you cancel, that instructor doesn't make any money that day. You don't get the experience of flying, and you probably push it off till next week. And I know that stinks. I've done it plenty of times, both as a student and an instructor. But you know what? Again, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. And there are some days, especially as a low-hour pilot, that it may be a beautiful day, but the winds are just kicking way, way too much. And you think to yourself, yeah, I could go flying because my instructor will have my back, but am I really going to learn anything? No, all I'm really going to learn is how to, not get my butt kicked by the wind effectively. So George, that's a very tough spot, and that's something we talk about a lot with my commercial pilots. It's the same kind of concept. When people want to start paying you money to fly them around, it begins to get very difficult to make these great go and no-go decisions because now there is, money on the line. And wow, well, I need to get paid, so I got to go fly it. I'm going to push it just a little bit. I know it's under my personal minimums, but you know what? I use this example a lot. Think back to the JFK accident. Here is a low-time pilot in way, way more airplane than he probably could handle for his hours. There's the beginning of your accident right there. Make it a plain VFR day, and he's still going to have a problem flying that airplane. However, it was obviously, as you know, low IFR conditions. On top of it, it was over the ocean. Anybody who's ever done night flying over the ocean knows how bad it is. So it's low visibility. It's IFR. It's nighttime. He's in an airplane he doesn't have a ton of experience with. He's a low-time pilot. And just to add one more kink to it, he's a prominent figure on his way to a wedding. And in the back of his mind, well, shoot, I told these people I'd be at this wedding. I am going to be there. We all know what happened with that accident. Obviously none of us are going to be, you may be in a situation like that, but we're not going to make that crazy of a decision ultimately. But you've just got to think this sort of stuff through, okay? Don't let the outside pressures bite you in the butt. Okay, let's see if I have any more questions here. Again, any last-minute questions, 877-537-6704. Happy to take them. I'm going to refresh my Twitter feed, refresh my Facebook feed real quick here, and then we will probably call it a day on that note. Nothing happening there. Checking this one more time. So guys, what's going to happen now is I'm going to switch over to the members-only portion of this show, where members, we're actually going to sit down and we're going to work through the first 5 questions of an actual Checkride. I'm going to share with you guys how these questions correlate. You know, you're going to see how uniform they are. We start with talking airworthiness and registration sort of stuff. Matt, that's why I wanted to wait till we get to that part to share that with you. So you're going to really see and hear these Checkride questions, and then obviously hear my answers, how my student answered them, and we'll kind of work through them as far as that goes. If you're not a member, that's something you want to listen to, visit pilotsinnercircle.com and consider signing up today. You can earn FAA Wings credits just for listening to this. You get access to a ton of my products completely free. Access to pre-recorded or recordings of actual check rides. Nobody out there is doing this sort of stuff. It's really, really neat stuff. So if you are struggling with preparing for your check ride, I really challenge you to jump into the Pilot's Inner Circle. Any of the levels of membership will be great for you. Check out pilotsinnercircle.com to learn more on that. What else? Guys, if you haven't checked out the Aviation Seminar at Sea, check that out. aviationseminaratSea.com. We're already booking up a ton of cabins. Last year was such a success and so much fun. I really hope to see you guys on that next year. That's in November. Also, if you haven't completed the 31-Day Safer Pilot Challenge, or maybe you fell a little bit behind, I encourage you to get back on that. saferpilotchallenge.com. There's 31 videos. Worked perfectly with the month of January to knock out a video each day, all towards working towards one goal, which is ultimately making you a safer pilot, really living out that mantra that a good pilot is always learning. So if you haven't checked that out, please do that. All that stuff is up on saferpilotchallenge.com. So guys, that is all I have for you today, members. I'll be posting your members-only episode here. Give me about 15, 20 minutes or so to get that up to you guys as far as that goes. So guys, anything you need from me, you guys know how to get in touch with me via email. Again, I challenge you to check out pilotsinnercircle.com to consider becoming a member today. Members, don't forget too, we have a webinar tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. There's another benefit for you non-members there. We have a webinar tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So guys, check that out. I look forward to chatting with you all more tonight. Thank you so much. Just for all you guys do. You guys are a huge blessing to myself, my beautiful wife, and this wonderful business. Anything I can do to make you a safer pilot, please don't hesitate to reach out. And most importantly, guys, remember that a good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, guys. See ya.